Welcome to the Reality Check, December 4th, 2018. Tonight, of course, we will talk a little bit about the death of George H.W. Bush. We will also talk about revisionist history, the infamous, I don't know if that's the right word, but Arizona's own Raul Grijalva. We'll talk about, of course, Al Sharpton, known to some, Sharp Tongue, known to me. Of course, we'll do the UFC 231 preview. So let's get ready to roll here. Now, obviously, the passing of Bush, very sad. I mean, whether you agree with his politics or not, he did a lot for the country. He served in the military. I mean, he served in different branches of government. Many jobs, vice president, obviously, president. So definitely, a lot of things he did for the country. And, if anything, he was a very mellow and nice guy, maybe too nice at times. But, it's just sad. A good person, a president that actually fought in a war, that served in the military with honors. Less and less common these days, but I guess a dying breed. So, our condolences to the Bush family. He lived you hate to see someone go, but you definitely could say he lived a full and complete life. The guy did many stuff over the age of 70, 80, that some of us don't even do in our 40s and 50s. So, lived a great life. I mean, that's pretty much to sum it up. You don't want to drag on about it or get to, you don't want to reinvent the history. You don't want to be, a revisionist in history, talk about now how great he is or that he did this or that you were on the side when all he did was like the George Stephanophoulos of the world and that would attack Bush constantly, the Dems that would attack him constantly. And now all of a sudden, just like they did with John McCain, oh, he was so awesome. He was the biggest piece of trash when McCain was running for the president, you guys said, and now all of a sudden he's a hero. Look, I'll tell it to you straight when, one day when Clinton dies, Bill Clinton, I'll say, he wasn't that good of a person. And I'll leave it at that, Yeah, do I want him to die? No. But I'll say like it is. When Hillary Clinton dies, I'll say she was a nastier person. Just because she dies doesn't mean she was a good person or anything changed. And let me tell you, when George Soros dies, I will say one of the few people in the world that I will say it'll be a better place now that he's not here. Because he is one of the biggest scums in the world. I mean, talk about ruthless. You want to talk about the 1%. How about the 0.001% that guy is? And how he's would rob somebody's last dollar just so he can make an extra buck. And I mean, to know stuff. So you have that. In the news, are actually, yes, this is true, sadly enough. We just found out, breaking story. I mean, it's been going on for the day, but a Steeler fan choked a pregnant Charger fan. So that one's caught on camera. Full investigation coming on that. Not to be outdone, some thug Cole-cocks a man, pummels him to the ground for his, yes, you got it, headphones. And then you have your other stories. How about Indian-born Democratic Representative Harmila Jayapal, or Jayapal. I don't know. I'm going to be like Al Sharpton, just have no idea how to pronounce it. But unfortunately, I don't get the prep time he does. Says the U.S. economy needs millions of wage-cutting visa workers for good jobs sought by many Americans and immigrants. So you read that, like, what did she just say? She demands that more visa workers. We need a new moral imagination on immigration. The number of visas for non-agricultural workers, such as construction workers, housekeepers, forest workers, they're stuck at 1990 levels. Only 66,000 visas, even though we need millions. So we need millions of people to do construction jobs, housekeeper, forest workers, and so forth and so on. That's what we need. The HB2, HB2As, the HB1s, whatever else they call that stuff. That is absolutely absurd. We don't need to upgrade our immigration system to prioritize for certain jobs. We have plenty of Americans that need jobs. Stop with this, everybody. Everybody doesn't have a job, and yes, there are more jobs now than under Obama, absolutely. But still, we need better jobs. And when you flood these jobs with cheap labor, what do you think happens? What do you think is going to happen to that construction pay if we bring in another 10 million illegals that can do construction work? It's going to go way down. And so the people that have those jobs right now that are American, they're going to be out of work because nobody's going to pay. You have to pay the wage, you have to pay insurance, you have to pay this. And if you can find somebody that will work under the books who doesn't know any better and will take half the money for the job, and they don't care about benefits because they're getting free stuff, so the government pays. They always talk about the Amazons and the Walmarts, how the government has to pay because those employees make so low. Well, they choose to stay at those jobs. They can move up, move around. But now here we're trying to flood the system, so now we have more of that, and then the wages go down. Not acceptable. Another one of these clowns, Democrat rep. What else do you expect, right? What else do you expect from these people? Not to be outdone, of course. The real leader of the Democrat Independent Party here, of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So, the Bernie Sanders supporter who wants Medicare for all. And she says Medicare for all would cost $32 trillion over 10 years. And she said that Pentagon accounting errors could help pay for part of the coverage. 21 trillion of the Pentagon's financial transactions could not be traced, documented, or explained. 21 trillion in Pentagon accounting errors. So Medicare costs 32 trillion. So 66% of the Medicare for all could have been already funded by the Pentagon. And that's before our premiums. She actually tweeted that out, and it was retweeted 25,000 times. So, very interesting. The 21 trillion was not one big pot of dormant money collecting dust somewhere. It's the sum of all the transactions, both inflow and outflow, which the Defense Department did not have adequate documentation. So, to put it in context, according to the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, defense spending from 98 to 2015 was nearly $9 trillion. And it estimates $7 trillion in spending on defense from 2019 to 28. So basically, what Ocasio was saying, I don't know where she came up with her number, if you completely defund the military for the whole next decade, you would actually have 20% of that 32 trillion she talks about. So if we had no military at all for the next 10 years, we'd be able to afford 1/5 of her fantasy Medicare for all plan. And that was, remember when she was talking about that the other week, and she said, well, it's going to be cheaper because when everybody has health care, when they can go whenever they want, it makes it cheaper. I don't know what fantasy land that is, but you see, when you go to the emergency room, most of the people there are the people getting the free health care because the rest of us can't afford to go there. You go there one time, you get your $100 aspirin. Sorry, you can't afford that. But, What else can you expect from people like that? Not much else, right? It's okay. But, so California, staying on the Democrat trail, and of course the leader of Bring Me to Your Leader, right? As Mater said, or as the alien said to Mater, bring me to your leader. Here's all my leaders. No, the leader of the Democrats, obviously California, where it all happens. So, a California lawmaker has pledged to reintroduce the bill that allows adults who live in the state illegally to receive Medicare paid for by the government. State Assembly member Joaquin Arambula, a Democrat, a doctor, announced his plans the Monday before last. Now, if the bill advances and passes, California would become the first state to extend Medicaid coverage regardless of immigration status. So the state projections for last year's bill found that 1.8 million people in California are uninsured and reside there illegally. So 1.2 million will qualify for Medi-Cal. That's the name of their Medicaid program in California. Unbelievable. You think about 1.2 million extra people on health care for a state that was so broke, that's what they blamed for the wildfires getting out of control. Yet, people pay the largest amount of taxes per paycheck in California. The estimated price tag would be $3 billion a year. $3 billion a year. Now, you know, that's always an underestimate. So you're looking more in the real ballpark of $5 billion a year. And maybe it's not 1.2 million that qualify, it's more like 2 million that qualify. So you're talking at least 2 million extra people on your dime getting health care at a $5 billion a year in a state that has riches beyond belief, yet has debt beyond belief. I mean, can you imagine? It's like you making $100,000 a year and you have no debt, you live comfortably, and you own, a decent car, decent house, you go on your one vacation a year, and your neighbor makes $10 million a year, and his house is getting repoed, his car is getting repoed, his vacation home's getting repoed, because he can't pay his damn bills because he's out spending his $10 million income a year. That's what California boils down to right now. Pretty pathetic. But what else can you expect from liberalism? It is, as Michael Savage said, a mental disorder. Now, we know about the Clinton tour, the ticket prices going down. What else can we say? Nobody's showing up to listen. I mean, firstly, at least Bill Clinton was humorous. Hillary Clinton, not humorous at all. Who would pay to listen to her talk? Now we had the French Prime Minister announces a suspension of the fuel tax hikes. You had people, now if you don't know this, they're trying to say the right-wing protest, whatever you want to say. Look, people were pissed off because you were raising with the taxes gas to over $7 a gallon. They can't afford to go to work. You saw whole ambulances out there protesting, lined up with their lights flashing. You've seen people with the yellow vests, and they're trying to make that like some... Okay, the yellow vest, if you don't know, in France, you're supposed to carry one of these yellow vests in your car. Because if you ever break down, you put that on and they know you need help. You're easily found. They know what you're on the side of the road for. So, these people put on their yellow vests. It wasn't some political group. It was people of average means to drive every day, like you and me. We drive to work. angry about it, and they should be. How is $7 a gallon gas going to help you if you're a hard worker? Does it affect the billionaires? No, not really. Who does it affect? It affects the people that are struggling every day to make it to work, and now you're just taking more money out of their pocket. How about the people that drive for a living? I mean, it's bankrupting. So obviously they've backed down about the, just another bad idea by liberals. Good old macaroon Macron over there. Speaking of macaroons, yeah, this just an absolute buffoon. Arnold Schwarzenegger taking stabs at Trump, talking about global warming, talking about he wishes he was the Terminator and can go back in time and stop fossil fuels. Maybe that's what he should make his next movie. Fossil fuel cop. Schwarzenegger does it again and saves the world. I mean, this is like a bad running joke. He's like a caricature of himself right now. At one time, this was a dude, and I know he took steroids, but he was huge and tough and on top of the world. And now he's just some fool that keeps on talking about stuff he knows nothing about. He doesn't even take the time to research. If you ever hear him give in-depth talk about global war, the guy's friggin' clueless. No idea what he's talking about. I mean, he might as well be Bill Nye the Science Guy. Schwarzenegger is just a fool. And it's like a caricature. It's like, shut up, you were a disaster. I mean, like, nobody cares, really. It's embarrassing. It is, really. So, yeah. Oregon. I had to pause for this one, because this one I really can't believe it. Here's society going downhill. Oregon is close to becoming the first U.S. state to legalize magic mushrooms. Magic mushrooms, yes. So Oregon Secretary of State approved the language needed for the ballot, which mean those in favor of decriminalizing the psychedelic drug need 117,578 signatures. And then they can get it in the 2020 general election. So if they're successful, it would be legal and could be manufactured under license. So obviously psychedelic mushrooms are currently illegal across the U.S. So they're saying their excuse is that psilocybin, I think it's psilocybin, if I'm saying it right, which is found in the psychedelic mushrooms, could help reduce anxiety in people with cancer. And it could be used as a treatment for anxiety, depression, or alcoholism. Yeah, you're not drunk anymore, you're just going loony on mushrooms. I mean, wow. And don't get me wrong, people that are dying of cancer and in pain, let them have whatever they want. I have no problem with that. But for the rest of the schmucks and more, the magic mushroom's going to fix your problem. Please, give me a break. That's embarrassing and humiliating. And just shows a lack of intelligence. I mean, just say I want to do drugs. I want to be, I just want to do drugs. That's what you might as well say. Very interesting. I was watching an interview last night from a gentleman who was from Tijuana, and he was talking about how in Tijuana they actually got another arena, because I guess they're keeping some of the migrants, illegal aliens, they were kept in a stadium, so now they found they have an arena to put them in, a little bit safe, by an extra place because the one place is already full. So they have this arena to put these people in, so they can, eat, whatever, be housed and whatnot, and be off the streets, not wandering and creating problems for the people of Tijuana. And I guess there are, I don't know if you want to call them officers, but human rights people, who are actually telling them that they can't force these people to go there, that they can wander their streets, and sorry, if they don't want to help and they just want to stay and wander, well, then that's it, because they got such rights. So, I mean, they're invading Mexico. They have no right to be there. And now they have rights. I don't understand how people get all these rights. It's a God-given right to invade whatever you want. Makes no sense. But, so now we're worried about their human rights. What about the human rights of the people who live in Tijuana and don't want to have to deal with this? What about the human rights of the Border Patrol agents who are getting rocks thrown at them? What about the human rights of the little kids that their parents are dragging them through this stupidity? What about their human rights? Oh, I forgot. Little kids don't have human rights because we can abort them, right? Sorry, my bad. My bad. Again, what can I say? And in the more serious news, Kristen listening to Maybe It's Cold Outside, wondering why unmarried couple is alone in the first place. Congregation erupts into violent protests as worship band shamelessly tampers with yet another timeless Christmas carol. Yep. Robert Mueller to release results of investigation day before 2020 election. Nice. Emmanuel Macron criticizes climate change tax protesters for not using carbon neutral riding methods. Geneva Conventions amended to include ban on the Christmas shoes. Way to go. So obviously those weren't serious news stories, but you got to throw some humor in there every once in a while. I don't know, big in the news this past week, they babbled about the Cohen deal, the lawyers got Trump, blah, blah, blah. If you really read into it, it's almost an exoneration for Trump. Again, not like he needs another one because he didn't do anything wrong, but it's almost another exoneration. You have Cohen saying that we're on the phone, but, basically this deal went nowhere. Like, firstly, it's not illegal to make business deals, but anyway, this thing never went anywhere. He had no connections. So, I mean, if Trump was such friends with Putin and Putin was helping get elected, you figure the least Putin could do would be hook him up with the hotel. And as you see, when Cohen was trying to even contact, he had no information to even get to Putin. We had a Treasury-led task force says the Postal Service should begin pricing packages with profitability in mind. Impose higher rates on general e-commerce goods and other non-essential items sent through the mail. Now, firstly, it's really just ridiculous. If we stop funding pensions, and I know they were promised pensions, but that's absurd. Most of the cost is paying people who don't even work there anymore. It's pretty ridiculous. A business will never be profitable. So stop talking about how we should charge more money for these services that aren't even there. We're just charging to make up for past mistakes. And I know that we don't want it to be a burden on the government, the post office, but today what they're doing, they're making money on. It's paying for the past that they can never recoup. And as more pensions are had, they can't recoup that. But also, we could stop funding mail from other countries. Stop the e-packets from China. Stop all that nonsense. If you stop that, we're paying for them to bring their stuff here, so it's way cheaper. Level that playing field, like you say. Then they pay the same price. People are going to order less from China. And one, you'll have more business. It's the more volume will make more profit for the post office. And two, we won't lose money on their packages, because we don't get paid full amount to handle their packages. So, again, stop funding mail from and to other countries. It's a very simple policy. That's it. Done deal. Done deal, that's it. So, let's see. Let's go to I don't know. I mean, Robert Mueller says he recommends no jail sentence for Flynn, and they're making it because Flynn cooperated so much. No, it's because Mueller knows nothing would hold up in court. If he really pushed this and tried to go for some max sentence, recommend that. So that's all Mueller does is recommend. Now, which is funny because I'll show you a little sleight of hand there that you don't notice. So Mueller recommends. He recommends no jail for Flynn because he cooperated. He also knows that if this went to a real trial and, Flynn stood up to this, Flynn could easily show that even people on Mueller's own team said he lied about nothing. He was totally honest from the get-go. So this is more of Mueller just trying not to stoke fire that could burn him. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Kind of like that. But what's funny is Mueller recommends for sentencing. But remember when Comey went on about Clinton and all the crimes she committed, that's where his job ended there. That would go to the DOJ, right? They would make the charges. Not Comey saying how, well, Clinton's guilty of all this stuff, but we don't think a court would convict her. That's irrelevant what you think they would convict or not. There's a crime committed, and this isn't a $10 crime, a $5 crime, which would slap on a wrist, so it's not worth the money you spend. This is up to possible treason. To be honest, if you knowingly set that up and you did that to circumvent their government because you were doing something illegal, that's treason, sedition. So for Comey to make no charges when that's not his job to say whether there are or aren't charges, his job was to present the evidence and maybe make a recommendation on the evidence. That's where his job ended. And that's what Mueller's doing here, and then the sentence gets carried out by somebody else. Okay, just so we know how that works. So now, I say it's time for UFC 231 preview. Exciting this Saturday. Now, first, on the main card, you have Jimmy, it's Jimi, but it's Jimmy Manuwa versus Thiago Santos. Now, Jimmy Manuwa 17-4, Thiago Santos 19-6. Jimmy Manuwa has a 3.5-inch reach advantage. Manuwa, he's lost his last two fights to Blankowitz and to Volkan Zamir. And before that, he won 2 fights. He beat Corey Anderson and Ovis St. Preux. Now, it seems like he's an up-and-down fighter. Win 1, lose 1, win 2, lose 2. It's kind of like a gatekeeper, man. Keep people honest. You have to be, if you come in there and you make a lot of mistakes, he'll take you out. He's definitely got the punching power to do that. It's a 205 weight division. And for Santos, like I said, he's 19-6. He's won his last 2 fights against Anders and Holland. He did lose to David Branch from punches. That was an impressive one for David Branch. But before that, he had won 4 in a row, Santos. He beat Anthony Smith. He beat Hermanson. So sometimes when he steps up, it seems like that's where Santos loses, like when he lost to Musashi, and like I said, Branch, Uriah Hall. That's when he gets in trouble. But I think in this fight, I think his power is going to be too much. I think, Manoa's best bet is that first round, but I think after that he starts to tire down a little. His power isn't as much. The reach advantage isn't going to mean as much, and I think Santos gets a second round KO in this fight. That's the way I see that going, and that's your opener of the, pay-per-view card. So your next fight is Hakeem Dawada, who's 8-1 against Kyle Bochniak, and Kyle is 8-3. Hakeem has a 3.5-inch reach advantage. He won his last fight against Austin Arnett. It was a unanimous decision, and before that he had lost from a guillotine choke to Danny Henry. He beat Seiler and Magadoff. Now, he's, 8-1. So the Henry loss was his only loss. He looks like he's gotten better. He's grown. Mostly punches and knees. He's been winning some by decision. He got caught in the one guillotine choke, and I was right away, first round. 39 seconds in. Bad performance, but otherwise he's looked really good. And for, Kyle, the kid's tough. He's a tough kid, but he lost his last fight against Zabib, Magdalena Shapiro, who's an amazing fighter. He beat Brandon Davis. That was a decision. I remember that was a pretty tough back and forth fight, and he lost to Jeremy Kennedy. So he's like a win one, lose one type of guy. He's definitely a tough opponent, but I think Hakeem's got more skill. He's got the 3.5-inch reach advantage, which will definitely play in there. I think he could keep Bosniak at bay, although he is tough, Kyle. So I still see it, though, unanimous decision for Hakeem. I think he's just his speed, and he'll just be able to, control this fight. Bosniak's tough. He's definitely not going to give up. He will be pestering Hakeem the whole fight, and that's his way to win. Maybe he catches him, but I don't see it. Like I said, I see Hakeem winning this fight, unanimous decision. Next fight, interesting fight. The Cowboy, Alex Oliveira, against Gunnar Nelson. Now, Gunnar Nelson, just hearing the name, it kind of makes you think of the Mighty Ducks, right? The Mighty Ducks. So Gunnar Nelson is 16-3, and Alex Oliveira is 19-5. Alex has been in some of the best, just crazy fights where he's standing and just swinging away, not shying away. Gunnar Nelson's a really good grappler. He lost his last fight. That was over a year ago, so he hasn't fought in a long time. This is his first fight, actually, of 2018. He's just kind of win two, lose one. See, when he first started, he was definitely on a win stride. He won, I think, his first 12 fights, and then he had lost his first one to Rick Story, by split decision. And then since then, he's lost to Damian Maia. Seems like Gunnar Nelson, just loses when he faces the upper competition. Oliveira has a 4.5-inch reach advantage, which is, definitely for him, it's an important thing for Oliveira because he is, a hard puncher, and he will make you pay if you want to come in. He's won his last two fights. He beat Carlos Condon, the natural-born killer. He beat Carlo Pedersoli. That was 39 seconds in the first round from punches. He lost that amazing fight with Yancy Medeiros. He beat Ryan LaFleur, Tim Means, Will Brooks. So, Oliveira is always tough and ready to fight. He lost to Donald Cerrone, but this guy doesn't back down. He's definitely a fan favorite. He's always exciting to watch. He hits hard. He never gives up. I see Oliveira winning this by a split decision. I mean, Gunnar Nelson definitely has some skill, but I see just Oliveira just imposing his will and just wearing him down. In a pretty brutal fight. We'll go back and forth, and both guys will have their moments. It'll be pretty interesting and exciting fight. It's a pretty just good card if you look at it as a whole. In the co-main event, we have a 125-pound, the women's championship belt fight. You have Joanna Jevchenko versus Valentina Shevchenko. So we got some big last names there, but both of these girls have been in championship fights. Valentina's 15-3. Shevchenko is 15-2. Valentina has a 1.5 inch and a half reach advantage. For Joanna, the only person she's lost to in her career, was Rose Namajunas. And she lost twice, or obviously she lost her belts, were lost in the rematch. The first time she got knocked out in the first round, she didn't look right. The second time she looked a lot better, but she lost by decision. Now, she came back and fought Ticia Torres, a win. It was a unanimous decision. But she just seems to be just talking about Rose and making excuses why she lost. That seems to be her constant, what she's consumed with. She's not doing stuff to get better. It just seems like she's living in the past. And she has not looked as sharp, her last two fights as she used to be. Because, she was blowing through people before that. She was, 13-0 at one point. She beat Gadelia. She, beat Carolina, Jessica Andrade, winning by decision, winning by punches. She beat Carlos Esperanza. She looked good, but it just seems like since the Rose fight, since she lost her belt, that's constantly in her head. That's what she goes back to, and on and on. And for Valentina, Valentina 14-3, right? I'm sorry, 15-3. Great record. Her last two losses were to Amanda Nunes. She lost two titles. She lost one by unanimous decision and one which was really close. Some people thought she won. She lost by split decision to Nunes. That was September of last year. Her last fight she won, she dropped down the weight class, and she beat Priscilla Kachko area, rear naked choke round 2. She looked good in that fight. She's looked good in most of her fights. Really, the first Amanda Nunes fight, she looked a little bit, and then she lost. In the beginning of her career, she had lost to Liz Carmouche, as a veteran fighter. That was the one time she got knocked out. She looked really strong in her second Nunes fight. She looked really strong when she beat Juliana Pena. She also had a decision unanimous win where she, beat Holly Holmes pretty good. So she's definitely a class, and she's coming down to this weight division. I think she's going to be good. There's no. I just see a third round KO for Valentina. I think she's just faster. I think she's mentally stronger than Joanna. Joanna is just, like I said, not gone a good way since her losses to Rose. She just doesn't look like the same fighter. It's still in her head. and she needs to bring more than her aim game to beat Valentina, because Valentina is just superb. She's just, she can beat you in many ways. She can go the distance. She's been in these deep trouble waters. That first time she was getting up pretty much by Amanda Nunes, she came out, she survived, and she got in her shots, and she learned from that. And the second one, she came back even tougher. She's shown progression upwards, Valentina, where Joanna has not. I think she can outbox Joanna. I think she has more tools, Muay Thai, she just has more skills, and I think she's going to get a third round KO from Joanna. She's just going to start taking over at the end of the first round, start peppering her, hitting her, attacking her, pressing, and send a message to every woman out there. She's one of the top. So that's your co-main event. And then, of course, you have your main event, right? Main event, interesting bout, hopefully it comes off, is Brian T.C. Ortega versus Max Holloway. So, Max Holloway, they have the same reach. For the 145-pound belt here, you have Holloway, who's 19-3, versus Ortega, who is 13-0. Now, for Holloway, his last bunch of fights were canceled, missing weight, getting hurt. Actually, it's crazy. The last time he fought was a year ago, like December 2nd. He beat Jose Aldo, and his fight before that, he beat Jose Aldo. So if you look at it, Holloway was just so dominant. It looked like he was getting better every fight. The last time Holloway lost, he'd lost 2 fights in a row. He lost to Dennis Bermudez, and he lost to Conor McGregor, and that was back in 2013. He hasn't lost since that. Impressive, impressive wins if you look at it. Cub Swanson, Charles Oliveira, Jeremy Stevens, Ricardo Lamas, Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo twice. So it's, like I said, 19-3. But it's got to be a concern that in the last 2 years, the guy's only fought twice. He hasn't fought at all this year. He's had constant weight problems, getting hurt problems. And to be honest, his last 3 fights were canceled. He was supposed to fight Frankie Edgar, he was supposed to fight Habib, and Brian Ortega once before. All 3 of those were canceled. From the last time he fought Jose Aldo, but before that, he was supposed to fight Frankie Edgar, and that was actually canceled on account of Frankie Edgar. But so you see, this guy's had some problems. So is he going to be the same guy coming out, Max Holloway? The best Max Holloway would make this the best fight, but are we going to get that Max Holloway? I don't know. He's never let us down when he's been in the octagon. The guys win by ground and pound, punches. He's won by unanimous decision. He's won by guillotine chokes. The guy wins many ways. He's very creative, very unorthodox. He's hard to hit, hard to keep down. I've seen him get taken down, and he gets up. Like I said, it looks like he's always gotten better, but with such a layoff and all these problems, it puts up definitely a red flag, And then you have him coming back to a fight like this, Brian Ortega. Now, since I first started watching Brian Ortega, I thought, wow, this guy is pretty amazing. I remember it was the Diego Brando fight. He won by a triangle choke, amazing. Then he came in and just beat down Clay Guida, who's tough. He beat down Renato Moicano, who's supposed to be, if Max Holloway can't fight for some reason, Moicano's supposed to be the person that's supposed to step in. Ortega already choked this guy out with a guillotine in round 3. He beat Cub Swanson the same way, and then he just destroyed Frankie Edgar. Now, I know Frankie is not as good as he used to be. He's older and stuff, but Frankie's still a top contender, and nobody had ever finished Frankie. He finished Frankie in the first round. And if you look at it, just looking at him in front, he was so huge. He looked so big for 145 pounds. He looked like he was 2 weight classes bigger than Frankie. I mean, that's the one thing when they first started off, because I'm a huge Frankie fan. I like Brian Ortega a lot. I thought he was going to be that champ one of these days. And I was hoping, Frankie just keeps moving fast, gets around, finds a way to bring Ortega in deep waters and gets him, because Frankie doesn't give up. I know he'd be in there. But when you saw him out there, the first thing that's what I noticed. Brian Ortega looked so gigantic compared to Frankie. I mean, it just didn't even look like they were the same weight class. He looked almost like 170 pounds Ortega did. So it was amazing. And the guy obviously has great skill. He can choke you out. He can get you with knees and punches, ground and pound. Any which way. He's just getting better every fight. I mean, his quality of opponent has gone up, and he just seems to steamroll from round 3 to round 2 to round 1, sending the message. And he's going to be ready. He last fought when he got Frankie, that was in March. So he's fought this year. He's fought, he's fresh. He's ready to go. I mean, hasn't lost. I just think that it's going to be a 4th round TKO for Ortega. I think he's just going to be all over Holloway, and Holloway is very crafty and slick and will get his shots in and push Ortega more than he's been pushed before. But I think that Holloway will wear down. He will get caught. Ortega will start to frustrate him, figure out that puzzle that is Max Holloway, and start to take over. And it'll be a 4th round TKO, and Brian Ortega will be the champ. And these guys probably will meet again at some point. But it's just, like I said, really red flag and dangerous to pick Holloway when he's been amazing the last bunch of years, but he's also been gone the last few. So, against somebody of Ortega, it's just, not a good idea. So, that's your UFC 231, and ought to be an interesting night. So, back to the serious stuff, right? Back to reality. We have this week Arizona's own Raul Grijalva. Now, many nationally don't know Grijalva. He is just Raul Grijalva, Democrat from Tucson. He is just a schlump, a pig, a bolvan. This guy is 2 feet beneath used gum on your shoe. And that's putting it lightly. But let me tell you about Grijalva, just to build it up so you know where we're coming from. Here's a guy who called for a boycott of his own state because he didn't agree with us following federal law on illegal immigrants. This guy shoots off his mouth. He dressed like a chump. It's an embarrassment when you see this guy. I mean, you wouldn't think this guy was in the government. You'd think he was some dude coming in from the ball field or something when you look at what he wears. He's on TV doing interviews, and you look at what he wears. It's an embarrassment. I mean, he doesn't even take himself seriously. He can't. It looks like a schlump. Takes no time. I mean, just for someone who's in the public eye, you should at least, for someone who has money as in the public eye, you should at least fix yourself up a little bit. We're not saying about looking good or not looking good. How about looking clean? How about looking like you care? How about looking like you haven't rolled out of bed after one too many? But here's lying the problem. So, Representative Raul Grijalva wrote an opinion column published in the USA Today, and he said that U.S. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke must resign because Grijalva said ethical and managerial failings. So, Zinke, who was a Navy SEAL, to put into context where these two people are, Zinke was a Navy SEAL. He actually said that it's hard for him to think straight, meaning Grijalva, from the bottom of the bottle. You know, this is coming from a man who used nearly $50,000 in taxpayer money, that was hush money, to cover up his drunken and hostile behavior. He should resign and pay back the taxpayers for the hush money and the tens of thousands of dollars he forced, the Department of the U.S. Interior Secretary to spend on investigating unfound allegations. And Zinke tweeted this, and he also included the hashtag tune in for more. So that's TUNEINN, like tune in, like it's an in, for more. So that's a reference to a Washington, D.C. dive bar that Grijalva frequents. So you have Grijalva, who released a statement. Of course, he didn't directly address what Zinke's accusations were. Of course not. And Grijalva said, the American people know who I'm here to serve, and they know in whose interest I'm acting. Grijalva said they don't know the same about Secretary Zinke. Now, that's funny. Raul Grijalva talking about who he's here to serve. Now, good old Raul Grijalva. We know who you're here to serve. You're here to serve one group of people and one person. The group of people are illegals. The one person you're here to serve is yourself at the end of the day. Because that's why you like the illegals, because they vote for you. See, Grijalva, we know this. Anybody with a brain knows this. Grijalva, I told you about he wanted a boycott of his own state. I mean, only a moron would say that. Here's a guy who showed up to a debate a while ago, long time ago. And this guy was so drunk that the independent candidate who was sitting next to him had to wake him up because he was sleeping on his shoulder pretty much. Don't worry, no media coverage on that. We know. But why would they cover that? They're not going to cover anything bad about their people. This guy's been pulled over by law enforcement multiple times under the influence. And unfortunately, because he's a lawmaker, which is bullshit, he gets a pass. I'm sorry, if you're drunk or whatever. And I know some local towns do the same thing for football players. Not cool. Everyone should face the prosecution for their crimes. And this guy has staffers who drive him around because he's been pulled over drunk so many times. Everyone locally knew it. Unbelievable, though, how this guy had to pay because he was so drunk and harassing his own staff, making it an unfit, unsafe workplace. And he's calling out somebody else on ethical issues. Unbelievable. Yes, but it is believable. Now, here's a great one. If there's one person who could beat the shenanigans of Raul Grijalva, it's the man that I like to refer to as the Sharpton. Al Sharpton. he sold the rights to his life story. Now, why would anyone buy that? His life story, let's see. False accusations against police. Let's see, what else? His daughter can't behave in the cab. How about Freddy's Fashion Mart, where he helped, basically responsible for the fact that people got killed, thanks to his rhetoric and revving up the crowds on false stuff. Reverend Al Sharpton now found the eager buyer for the rights to his life story. And who was that eager buyer who paid $531,000 for the life story rights for a 10-year period of Al Sharpton? Well, it was, and check it out, the National Action Network. Man, National Action Network, ever hear of it before? Well, that's good old Al's own charity. That's right now, National Action Network. They can sell those rights to Hollywood or other takers for a profit. But neither the Reverend nor the charity would identify what producers are waiting for Sharpton content. So, Sharpton, who is the president of the National Action Network, when does he get the cash? He already gets $244,661 in compensation in 2017 from the group. So the charity who has to pay him $244,661. A guy who has his own TV show and is living life rich needs to take over $200,000 from his own charity. And now he's selling his own life story to his own charity. Unbelievable. Sharpton claimed the idea for this great purchase came from two of the National Action Network board members. And of course he wouldn't name them. They want to create a source of revenue for the civil rights organization after he steps down in about a year. You mean he's going to bankrupt it so when he steps down in a year, there's nothing left there. He was in contracts for 2 movies and a 3rd contract in the works. One of these movies are already in production, Sharpton claimed. Of course, no details. Play was being shopped around, and there were other assets that would generate revenue for the National Action Network, including a recording where James Brown is singing and he's talking, and video footage of him with Michael Jackson. You've got real property here. You're not just talking about me as an activist. Wait a minute. Let's back that up. An activist? More like a terrorist. Because that's all Al Sharpton was. If there's something to be put on this guy's tombstone, it would be never do something for nothing. That's Al Sharpton. Never do something for nothing. Because he wouldn't even attend a funeral unless he was getting paid. Oh, I'm grieving the wrongful death of you. Now, sign this check and I'll do the eulogy. This guy would never do anything for free. Oh, you poor mom, you're grieving. The white man shot your son? Oh my gosh, I'm here to help. I'm here to help. I need $1 million. $500,000. $100,000. Anything. Just get me paid. And then I'll help you with your grieving. and I'll stand up and show everybody how you were wrong. Remember, I only accept cash up front. That's Al Sharpton. So yes, we did find somebody who is worse than Raul Grijalva. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. How this guy who owes $750,000 in taxes still to this day. Unbelievable. Amongst other liens he has against him. And this guy still is not in jail. The tax evasion, just this guy has the big racket where companies pay him to actually not call them racist. There is nothing. This guy is the money hustler, the biggest money hustler you've ever seen. And that's why on his tombstone it should say, never do something for nothing. That's Al Sharpton. And that's the reality check for December 4th, 2018. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week. And don't be an Al Sharpton.